My phone buzzed on the nightstand at exactly 3 a.m. It was Brenda, my next-door neighbor, and her voice was nothing more than a terrified whisper through the receiver. "Diane, there's a man in your backyard with a crowbar." I got up without turning on the lamp, feeling the cold hardwood under my bare feet. I didn't panic. At 68 years old, you learn that fear is just a distraction. I padded quietly to the back window and nudged the curtain aside just a fraction of an inch. The moonlight illuminated the silhouette of a man leaning against the solid wood door of my workshop. He had a canvas duffel bag at his feet and was gripping a metal crowbar. Brenda was still on the line, breathing heavily. "I'm calling the cops," she whispered. "No," I replied calmly. My eyes locked on the window. "Don't call anyone. Brenda, go back to bed and lock your doors. I'll handle this." The man in the yard shifted his weight to get better leverage with the tool. His profile caught the faint glow of a distant street lamp. I froze for a split second, but my shock quickly morphed into ice-cold clarity. This wasn't some random prowler looking for a quick score. It was Jared, my daughter Paige's husband. He had been asking questions for months about the restoration equipment and industrial tools I kept out there since my husband passed away. I always knew he was greedy, but I never imagined he was this bold. I let the curtain fall closed. Instead of reaching for the phone to call for help, I walked straight to the electrical panel in the hallway. It was time to give him a proper welcome. To understand why Jared was standing in my backyard with a crowbar, you have to rewind a bit. My workshop isn't just a shed full of rusty hand tools. It's a 400-square-foot space where I restore antique furniture, a trade that has brought me peace and a level of financial independence my kids severely underestimate. Inside, I have professional-grade polishers, precision saws, and a wood lathe that costs more than the car Jared drives. He started dropping hints about 6 months ago during our Sunday dinners. He would wander over to the shop, peek through the window, and ask how much I thought it was all worth, or if I didn't think it was dangerous to have so much dead money sitting around at my age. Paige usually backed him up from the patio table, chiming in that I should sell it all and just relax. I never argued with them. I just poured more coffee and changed the subject. But I didn't ignore the red flags. 3 days after his most pushy comment about the lathe's resale value, I called a locksmith. I swapped the old lock for a commercial-grade deadbolt and installed steel drop bars on the inside of the door. Jared thought the old wood would give way with a couple of shoves from his crowbar. He had no idea he was trying to pry open a safe disguised as a garden shed. I heard the metal grinding all the way from my hallway. Jared was getting frustrated. My shop was holding strong, mocking his efforts. I pulled my robe over my shoulders and grabbed the heavy mag light I keep in the entryway drawer. I didn't need to scream, cry, or demand answers. I just needed him to understand, without a shadow of a doubt, that his free ride and his access to my life ended tonight. I crept downstairs in total silence. The house was pitch black, exactly how I liked it. When I reached the kitchen, I paused in front of the master switch for the exterior lights. I'd installed those massive halogen floodlights 2 years ago for the nights I worked late in the yard. I flicked the switch up. The entire backyard erupted in blinding white light. Through the glass of the back door, I watched Jared physically jump back, dropping the crowbar like it had burned his hands. It hit the pavers with a loud clank. He threw an arm over his face to shield his eyes. Completely disoriented, I opened the kitchen door and stepped out onto the patio. The early morning air was brisk. Jared blinked, struggling to focus until he made me out standing on the porch. Arms crossed, the heavy flashlight switched off in my hand. Diane, he stammered, lowering his arm. The blood had completely drained from his face. I thought I heard a noise from the street. I came to check on you. Just wanted to make sure nobody was trying to break in. I looked at the crowbar on the ground, then at the empty duffel bag by his feet. I didn't even bother laughing. The lie was so pathetic it wasn't worth the breath to respond. Leave the bag, I said, my voice low and deadpan. Leave the tool. Turn around and walk out the gate. If you ever set foot on my property uninvited again, the lights won't be the only thing that surprises you. He opened his mouth to fumble through another excuse, but one look from me shut him up. He nodded awkwardly, backed up a few paces, and practically ran toward the alley. I stood there until I heard his car engine turn over and speed off. By 9 a.m., the coffee maker had finished its cycle. I was sitting at the dining table, reading the morning paper as usual. When the front door opened, Paige rushed in, dropping her purse on the entryway chair. She'd used her key. Naturally, Mom, she started, marching into the kitchen with a tight, nervous smile. Jared told me what happened last night. He was completely mortified. He said there was a huge misunderstanding that he just came over to grab a tool for his car that broke down a few streets over. And he didn't want to wake you. I took a sip of my coffee. I set the mug down on the saucer without a sound and looked her dead in the eye. Paige stopped talking. She had always been quick to cover for her husband, assuming my silence was a sign of weakness or that I just didn't get it. Paige, I interrupted, my voice calm but immovable. Don't insult my intelligence by expecting me to believe that garbage. She blinked, taken aback by my bluntness. But Mom, your key, I demanded, holding my right hand out over the table. What? The key to this house. Put it on the table, please. Paige instantly went on the defensive. She crossed her arms and tilted her chin up. You're offending me. I'm your daughter. Do you seriously think I knew he was coming over? You're punishing me for something I didn't even do. I'm not arguing with you, Paige, I replied, keeping my hand outstretched. I'm taking back control of my doors. The key. She saw I wasn't going to budge. With a huff of pure frustration, she dug into her purse, pulled out her keychain, and unhooked my house key, dropping it onto the wood table with a sharp clatter. I nodded, picked it up, and slipped it into my pocket. Thank you. Lock the door on your way out. That same afternoon, I sat down at the small desk in the living room with my accounting binders. For the last 4 years, ever since Paige and Jared got married, I had been their unspoken safety net. I paid the $450 monthly HOA fee for their condo, under the guise of it being a gift to help them save. On top of that, Paige had a credit card in my name for emergencies, which, mysteriously, kept getting swiped for expensive dinners out and weekend outfits for Jared. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank's portal. I didn't feel sad or guilty. I just felt absolute clarity. You can't buy loyalty, and you certainly can't buy respect with a few clicks. I canceled the recurring automatic transfer to their building's management company. Next, I navigated to the Authorized Users tab for my credit card. I saw Paige's latest charge $85 at a boutique wine shop from the afternoon before. I let out a sigh, hovered my cursor over the red button that read, Permanently Block Card, and clicked it. I didn't send them a heads-up text. I didn't write a long, dramatic letter explaining my reasons. The problem with over-explaining is that it invites the other person to debate, and I had zero interest in a debate. The rules of the game had just changed, and they were going to find out the most practical way possible when they tried to use resources that no longer belonged to them. I closed the laptop, got up, and went out to the yard to water my plants. The late afternoon air felt crisp. For the first time in months, it felt like this house was entirely mine again. 2 days later, my phone rang right at noon. It was Paige. Her voice was high and tight, trying to maintain a casual tone that was clearly crumbling. "Mom, the card was declined at the grocery store. The cashier said it's blocked. Can you call the bank? It's probably just a glitch." "It's not a glitch," I replied, pruning the dead leaves off my rose bushes with a small pair of shears. "I canceled it." There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. "You canceled it. But Mom, how are we supposed to pay for groceries this week? Jared doesn't get paid until Friday." "You'll have to make do with what you have," I answered, tucking the shears into my apron. "This is about the other night, isn't it? You're pulling our support over one mistake Jared made. Mom, you can't be this drastic." "It's not a punishment. Paige, it's a reality check. You're adults now." That evening, she and Jared showed up at my door, unannounced. Paige was holding a box of pastries from a nice bakery down the street. I answered the doorbell, but didn't open the main door right away. Instead, I stepped out onto the enclosed porch, keeping the screen door locked between us. "We came to talk." "Diane," Jared said, taking a step forward, laying on a thick, conciliatory tone. "We want to smooth things over. You're all alone in this big house. We think the stress is getting to you, and maybe you need someone else to handle some of these responsibilities for you." I stared right at him. His sheer audacity was almost impressive. He tried to rob me. I caught him red-handed, and now he was suggesting I was losing my marbles and needed him to take over my estate. "Thanks for the pastries," I said through the mesh, not unlocking the door. "But I'm not hungry, and my house and my finances are in perfect order. Have a good night." I turned around and walked back inside, leaving him holding the box. Jared's little suggestion that I couldn't handle my own responsibilities gave me the exact push I needed. They wanted the house. They wanted the cash value of my tools. And eventually, they wanted the lot, if they couldn't force their way in at night. They were going to try to slowly take over as my caretakers by day. At the crack of dawn the next morning, I took permanent action. I called an old buddy of my late husband's, a guy who owned a large industrial cabinetry shop on the north side of town. He had always admired the lathe and the precision saws I had. He drove over that same afternoon with a box truck and 2 of his guys. There was no haggling. I gave him a fair price, and he wired the money directly to my account on the spot, double what Jared could have ever gotten pawning them off. In under 3 hours, the heavy machinery was entirely off my property. I only kept the hand tools I actually used, my smaller sanders, and my restoration supplies. The space was suddenly wide open, clean, and most importantly, completely free of high-ticket temptations. With the cash safely tucked away in an account that didn't have physical debit cards and was completely inaccessible to anyone but me, I spent the rest of the week remodeling the detached guest studio in the back of the lot, right next to the garden. It was small, cozy, and perfectly functional. I hired movers to shift my essential furniture back there. My master bedroom in the main house was now empty. The board was set for the next move. My house in the suburbs is a highly sought-after property, spacious, full of natural light, and sitting in a very quiet neighborhood. It was way too big for a widow who preferred tending to her garden over vacuuming empty bedrooms. I didn't even need to put a "for rent" sign in the yard to find takers. I mentioned it to Brenda, and within 2 days, She brought over her nephew, a college professor looking for a safe place for him and his wife, who worked from home. I showed them the main house. We agreed that the yard would be visually divided by some large bamboo planters. They would get the two-story house and the front yard, and I would live peacefully in the spacious back studio, with my downsized workshop and my own private slice of the garden. We signed the lease that very week. They handed over the first month's rent and a security deposit. On Saturday morning, the new tenants started moving their stuff in. A small U-Haul parked out front. I watched from the window of my studio as they unloaded sofas and boxes. I felt a deep, grounding sense of satisfaction. I had monetized the very space Jared and Paige thought they were going to inherit ahead of schedule. There was no longer a big, empty house for them to claim they needed to help me take care of. I brewed a cup of tea and sat in the wicker chair on my new private patio. Everything was exactly where it needed to be. Now. The news just had to reach the people it was going to sting the most, and I knew they wouldn't take long to show up. It was Sunday afternoon, like clockwork. Jared's car aggressively pulled up and parked in front of the property. I saw him poke his head through the front gate, followed by Paige, who was balancing 3 large moving boxes in her arms. They were almost certainly coming with the excuse of storing some things in my workshop, a classic tactic to mark their territory. They opened the exterior gate and stopped dead in their tracks. Out in the main yard, Brenda's nephew was assembling a brand new Weber grill. His wife was hanging a potted fern on the front porch. I stepped out of my back studio, wiping my hands on a shop rag. I walked up to the bamboo divider that now separated the properties. "Mom!" Paige gasped, dropping one of the boxes onto the grass in pure shock. "What is going on here? Who are these people?" "They're my tenants," I replied matter-of-factly. "They rented the main house. I've downsized and moved into the back studio." Jared stomped forward, his face red with anger, totally dropping his concerned son-in-law act. "You can't do that. This is a family home. And where are the tools in the shop? I just looked through the back window, and it's half empty." I stared at him, letting a full second of silence pass to highlight the sheer absurdity of his entitlement. "The valuable tools are sold. Jared," I informed him, keeping my voice low and level. "The money is secure in the bank. The house is rented out and generating income. There is nothing of value left here that isn't under lock and key, or leased out. Now, please don't bother my tenants, and take your boxes with you." Paige started crying out of frustration. "You're shutting us out. You're treating us like strangers. We thought one day we'd move in here to take care of you." "I know how to take care of myself." "Paige," I replied softly, but without giving an inch. "And I hope the two of you learn how to do the same. If you want to come over for a cup of coffee and visit me, you are always welcome, as long as you call ahead." But Jared is no longer allowed through my gate. He looked like he wanted to yell something else, but noticing that Brenda's nephew was watching him closely with his phone in his hand, Jared spun on his heel and stomped back to his car, kicking a rock down the driveway. Paige followed him in silence, awkwardly picking up her boxes. It's been 8 months since that day. Life in my studio is wonderfully peaceful. My tenants are respectful and pay on time every month. With the rental income and the cash from selling the machinery, my finances are more solid than ever. Paige comes to visit me about once a month. She sits in the wicker chair, drinks lemonade, and we talk about the weather or her job. She doesn't ask for money anymore, and she has completely stopped bringing up Jared in my presence. The boundaries are crystal clear, and because of that, our relationship is honestly more genuine than it used to be. This morning, Brenda peeked over the bamboo fence to say hello. She found me sitting in front of my shop, sanding down a small oak side table in the morning sun. She smiled and handed me a cup of coffee over the fence. I took it, breathing in the scent of clean sawdust and blooming flowers. Some problems don't require massive blowouts or screaming matches to be solved. You just need to know exactly where to put the deadbolt. Sometimes, the greatest act of self-love isn't an explosive confrontation or an endless debate. It's the simple, quiet act of making a decision. We're constantly taught to compromise for the sake of the family or out of a fear of rocking the boat, completely forgetting that the most exhausting thing you can do is live in a space where your hard work and autonomy aren't respected. Peace of mind isn't something you beg for. It's something you build by setting clear, tangible boundaries. You don't always need to raise your voice or win an argument to make yourself heard. Sometimes, all it takes is changing a lock, shutting off a financial tap, or redefining who gets access to your life. Ultimately, protecting your space and your peace isn't an act of selfishness. It's an act of responsibility. The most important respect you'll ever secure will never depend on waiting for other people to change. It depends entirely on the actions you take to protect yourself.